This is my last Sunday as your pastor. I will give my last homily as pastor this coming Tuesday, and we will have the great joy of Bishop Vetter celebrating the Mass with me. But this is my last official Sunday. It's been a tremendous blessing and joy and great honor to have been your pastor and to taught from this pulpit and several others as we renovated this place. But more than anything, just to see what God has done in the lives of so many of you individually, so many families, so many marriages, so much faith. It's the same people, but an entirely different people than I looked out on upon 14 years ago. Praise be Jesus Christ. And if that wasn't enough for this Sunday, this week, you saw one of the most magnificent things that God will do in your lifetime. Right, when we think of God working in our lives, we certainly can see him in retrospect. And then sometimes we'll say, maybe even pretty clearly, God heard my personal prayer and answered me. But very rarely do we see him working in only the way God can work, with tremendous power, precision, and efficiency against evil, real time. And one of the most amazing things about God working against evil in real time is when God works, everything is judged, everything is shown in absolute clarity of his divine light, and nothing can stop him. Now, this is something I never thought I would be able to say. Roe is dead. We won. The answer to all of your prayers for 50 years. I remember being 4.5 years old and praying the rosary with my mom and pushing my little brother, at least I thought I was, around the abortion clinic there. Went on for so long, after a while I kept praying, but just kind of figured it'd always be with us. And I thought if it wasn't, it was going to take something so unbelievably powerful, maybe a civil war. Archbishop Sheen used to say, the end to abortion is nuclear war. This is what's so amazing about how God did it. Now, I've had some people walk out on me here this Sunday. Nothing new. But I want to clarify something before I get into what I'm going to say, because there are 3 points of view that this can be taken from. Actually, 2. The one is a political thing, and then, of course I have people that are like, you don't have any right to talk about politics. Okay, fine. We won't. I would disagree with that, but whatever. Secondly, within that realm is going to be split into different quadrants, right? There's Republican, there's Democrat, there's independent, and then we can go a little bit farther and say, conservative or liberal, and all of the stuff in this nation that is polarized, that everybody is so ridiculously sensitive to this stuff that we've missed the third quadrant. And the third quadrant is God's perspective. So, if you haven't noticed, in the scriptures, God has a law. Jesus also is a lawgiver, because the supreme ruler of the universe is Jesus. So he allows us in his permissive will to make laws. Those laws may or may not be in accordance with his divine will, and if they are not in his accordance with his divine will, then, if you will, there's the political God structure, which is moral. Within that structure, I am one of his spokesmen, amongst many other things in my role as a priest. So I'm coming through that prism this Sunday to show you, as a Catholic priest, not supporting any political party or any particular person, but using their names to show you what God has done. And in doing so, we will also show you how the gospel, ironically, on this Sunday, feeds right into it, because God's providence is incredible, and how humanity right now is being sifted, both by the devil and by God, to see what is actually in our hearts and what side of the line we stand on, because finally, maybe some of you have been fighting it with me, but I've been fighting this war that I'm going to tell you about for a long time. But it is yet to come in clarity into the light. And it is finally coming into the light. So people can't hide any longer and play their dumb games. This war is between light and darkness, the truth and the illusion and lie, Jesus and the devil, and whoever will follow them in any particular area on whatever side of the line you choose to be on. And that choice is ours. So clearly, God overthrew Roe. And nobody's talking about that because the devil doesn't want that. The last thing he wants is for somebody to say, wow, God just totally kicked your... You want to know something really funny? On the date that it happened, add up the numbers. They add up to 666. There's signs all over the place. God just went whap right across the devil's face and it's gone. And he didn't do it with a war, nothing. Like, he did it so like nobody thought he would ever do it, including good Christians. I want to start by telling you an Old Testament story. And just in case you've been wondering, I'm going to be going on for a while. It's my last homily, so I got to give like a 3-weeker. In the Old Testament, as you know, during the time of Jeremiah, the Jews were exiled to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed their city and took them into a foreign land in which they were enslaved, raped, persecuted, treated like garbage for 70 years. And then this guy by the name of Cyrus, who is a Greek king, I got that right, could be off a little bit there, but I'm pretty sure he was a Greek king. Might have been a Persian, actually. But anyway, he's coming down. And they had left Jews on the outskirts of civilization, so there were pockets of them. And they ran into some of them, and the Jews are like, well, where are you going? And he's like, I'm going down, because Nebuchadnezzar had died, the great king. I'm going down to defeat Babylon, which was like saying, I'm going to defeat the United States of America. It's not going to happen. Babylon had this massive wall. A river ran through the city. They could close that wall and sustain themselves for as long as they needed to because they had water and they had food. And a great army, for that matter. So they say, well, yeah, but like 700 years ago, Isaiah has this to say, tell my servant Cyrus that he'll conquer underneath the gates. So they're like, well, it can't be the main gate. Well, where else would there be gates? Well, on the base of the wall where the river was, there were gates that locked the river that water could flow through. So Cyrus says, well, if it is me, maybe they're open. So they dove down, and lo and behold, the gates of Babylon were open. Apparently they forgot to check them. So the army went down underneath the gates, came up on the other side, and conquered the city with very little bloodshed at all. Now, you would think Cyrus would become a Jew. He didn't. He remained a pagan. But he acknowledged the Jewish God, and he said, clearly, this God has delivered the world into my hands. So what can I do that would be pleasing to his will? He sends the Jews back to Jerusalem, builds the temple with his money, reestablishes their kingdom, allowing them to govern within his own kingdom. And as a pagan king that they knew not before, God delivered the chosen people from Babylon. So what happens, everyone, is we get it into our head that we've got it all figured out, right? I don't care if you're like some right-wing Catholic or some left-wing Catholic, liturgical or not. None of that, at the end of the day, really matters when you're dealing with God's will. Now, clearly the church is speaking God's will, but on either case, Father included, we love to box him up into basically our belief system or the way we think things should be and say, well, that's the way he's going to act, and if he doesn't act that way, or the Pope doesn't act that way, or whoever doesn't act that way, then it can't be God. And that's both right and left. They're essentially the same spirit. So again, through this Catholic priest prism, this is what happened. Assumingly, a pagan, sort of Christian, got into business, made a lot of money, at somewhere along the line clearly had some level of conversion on many moral issues, became a Christian on some level, decided that the government or the country, from his own perspective, have gone awry, ran for president and won. His name is Donald Trump. Now, from a Catholic perspective, because this is what we were preaching for years, your vote matters. And it's about what the church supports, because that's what Christ supports. It doesn't necessarily matter what the party is, because we had how many apparently Christian Republican presidents that claimed to be pro-life prior to Donald Trump that didn't do a damn thing? Nothing. And that angers me because they lied, and so have other politicians along the way, claiming to be Catholic. Right, left, doesn't matter. They don't do what Christ wants. They do what's good for themselves, good for the party, or good for politics. That's a coward. This man, who both now the right and the left don't like, who both now the Republicans and Democrats seem to despise because he was not a politician, was the most pro-life president that we have ever had in history. Not just by what he said, but by what he did. So, the guy that, was a little gruff when he spoke, was a bully apparently, was mean, unpolitical, rude and crass, the businessman from New York that no one could tolerate for another second, overturned Roe. He overturned Roe because he put in 3 Supreme Court justices that we knew would do that. Now, this is where this, like I said, I'm going to be going on for a while. This is where it just gets wildly interesting because God does not work like man does. So look at what's coming to the surface, everyone. It's hilarious, but it's just freakishly embarrassing for a Catholic. And we can be very proud at the same time. So, you've got the once pagan, businessman who has whatever conversion he had, I don't know, he's never talked about it, that does the most Catholic Christian thing that we've been waiting for God to do through someone for 50 years. But in the eyes of man, he's the gruff, bullying, mean, unbelievably sinful, terrible person. The one that we're apparently holding up as the Catholic who carries his rosary in his pocket and has been told to just keep practicing his good Catholic faith is the President of the United States, Joe Biden, our brother in the Catholic faith, who came out in the midst of the greatest decision that has been made in the history of our country to get rid of the most evil law that has ever been created, says it's the most tragic time in our history, and the court has erred. What does Jesus say? You will know them by the fruit. You know a tree by its fruits. I put them both before you this morning. What is the will of God? And I'm not talking about the rest of their lives. This decision, what they have said, you know them. How about the other Catholics? Pelosi, who's now been excommunicated. Thank God for the Archbishop of San Francisco. What a winner. Write him a letter. The court has erred. The court has erred. Catholic after Catholic. I'm not a one-issue voter. We killed 67 million children before we figured this out. Now, I haven't even gotten into the gospel. I'm going to tell you about some Catholics here in a second that followed the road plan. It's all Catholic right now. That's what's so cool about what's going on. It's on. God's getting involved and the truth is coming out. We at least have something to fight for. So God, Jesus, who is God, is going to give us the roadmap for this war, right? Because if you notice, Jesus isn't the passive one here. Jesus is very direct and active and extreme because Jesus is at war with Satan and then keeps just killing him over and over again, which the primary one was the cross. He knows he's going to win. The devil doesn't even know who he is in the flesh. But he's giving us the roadmap and the battle plan of how we're supposed to act in many different areas, but today's a very good one, right? So we got these 3 different calls. This is about being called to be a disciple of Christ. And the first one is the guy that says, probably with goodwill, I'll follow you wherever you go, right? Got the new preacher in town. Like this guy, I want to be part of his mission. All right, well, you know what? I'm God incarnate, the richest and most powerful being in the universe, and I sleep in the dirt every night. So I gave up everything to come and save you. So what it's going to mean to be my disciple is you may have to give up everything, or it's going to cost you. And that's what we all need to be thinking about right now. What is your faith? What has it cost you? And what is it going to cost you? And what if it does cost you everything, right? How quickly the narrative could switch to these were these Supreme Court conservative justices to know they actually made this decision because they were Catholic. Where would that go? Are you willing to lose, go bankrupt, maybe even be imprisoned, forced out of the churches? Remember, this is my last homily. Be ready. Be ready. Christianity has never been easy. If you're living the coffee and donut thing and that's not Christianity. That's Christianity, the cross. And we've drifted into this other thing over the course of time. You get these people, I've heard this so many times, I don't come to church anymore because I just never got anything out of it. How about salvation? Because Christ has given all of that to you, and, Father's homily is just so boring. Oh. Came to be entertained and fed like a rock concert. This is the way it works. Jesus, who's God, the all-loving being, comes sacrificially, dies on the cross as a supreme act of love for you and your sin and me. And we are so moved by that in the moment that we then say to him, what do we do? And he says, do as I did, love one another. So you love God above all other things, you love your neighbor as yourself. That's what we get out of it, service, with the foundational sacramental level. and in that service and standing for the truth, if you actually do, it will cost you something, because the devil will hate you like he hated him. Like, when you really think of all the gospel, it just starts coming together very quickly, right? If the world hated you, remember that it hated me first. And all of these other lines that he has. Second man, this is even more reasonable. He says, follow me, right? Well, let me go bury my father. Wow. Let the dead bury the dead. That's not me. That's Jesus. See, he's been painted in the culture as this, like, the buddy Jesus, right? Remember that thing from McDonald's? It was totally stupid. Jesus is an extreme warrior for the Father. He loves extremes. So do I. I get where he's coming from. Because it paints a point. So the second lesson, first it's going to cost you something. The second lesson is seize the opportunity. Now here's the kicker. Let's take it from a worldly standpoint. If you got a business opportunity, let's go back and talk about Amazon.com, right? I think you could get Amazon stock. It was like one of those penny stocks when it first came out. It's something like $2,000 to $3,000 a share now. And let's say you knew when Amazon came out that, or you saw it moving and you were like, that's going to be worth something, and you had $1,000 to spend on it, would you be like, let's give it a couple weeks? I got things to do today, maybe a nap, or the kids got games or whatever. No, you would seize it immediately, because the God of this particular life from a secular standpoint is money, because it gives you access to the world. God gives you access to everything and it competes with them. That's not the point. The point is you seize the opportunity as a human in this life. Do we even know what God is calling us to do? Like, if I came to you and said, what mission are you on from God? Particularly. Do we have any idea? Well, I go to church. That's not it. That's the bare minimum that you do for your own salvation. Then there's the raising the kids in the faith. Obviously, what you do as a mom and a dad. Do they know their prayers? Go home and pray the act of contrition as a family. See if everybody knows it. Try that one out. Whatever the thing is, it's there and gone. And God needs people that are like, okay, where are we going next, Lord? It's like the quarterback in the huddle. All right, here we go. Versus, we'll get to it tomorrow. It's not that big of a deal. No, it's a huge deal. 67 million children died. 1 second on that. This is all going to come together really awesomely. Third, I just want to say goodbye to my family. Anyone who turns their hand from the plow is not fit for the kingdom of God. Why? Well, now think about this. We have GPS combines and all this stuff now, but back in the days of oxen, you had to keep those suckers going, right? And if you're looking all over the place, your plow is going to be all over meaning you don't have any focus. So in your Christianity, you're plowing up your own field, maybe. So it's going to cost you something. The opportunity is there, and God doesn't wait around. It's right now. And you need a laser precision focus to keep this thing on track, because what he's going to do is going to be powerful. And we've seen it in the history of the church. And we just saw it this week. These justices, even the ones that voted against, we got more Catholics on the Supreme Court right now than I think maybe we ever have. I don't know, but there's a lot of them. And several of them clearly decided, you guys, this thing was released on the Feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. From here on out, it will perpetually be on the Feast of St. John the Baptist that did what? Leapt in the womb at the presence of Christ in the womb, testifying from the very onset of the Lord's appearance that life begins at conception. And that's when this will be revealed celebrated every single year. But on this year, it happened to be the Feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus on a date that adds up to 666. So what happened? The Sacred Heart of Jesus crushed the serpent and leaves it as a perpetual testimony on the Feast of St. John the Baptist. Awesome. And it was the Catholics on the Supreme Court with a few others that stood for the truth. Pen to paper, and one moment, gone. So, hear me, Supreme Court justices, because this is online. If you're seeing this, thank you. And you got a parish and priests that are behind you that are praying for you. Keep marching forward, because everyone, their decision is a battle cry from God right now to the rest of his kingdom that it is time to move. We have the upper hand, and we have people that are living their faith. You just saw it. Think about it. What they did. They're not even living in their own homes. The other Catholic brother in the White House hasn't offered them any more security. You think you'd be afraid of being assassinated? I know I would. You think they're not afraid for their kids, in which all of these rogue organizations, isn't it fascinating? We as peaceful Christians for 50 years pray for the end of abortion, and God does it for us in the end. The moment that they don't get their way, now you see the demonic forces. Destruction, hate, division, fires, murder, whatever's coming. They're having a temper tantrum, which is exactly what Satan does. They need our prayers. But they did the gospel. They discerned that it was going to cost them something, and it did. They seized the opportunity when it was given to them. And they haven't looked back, but they're marching forward. You got to love Clarence Thomas. Send it all to us. I leave you with this. This war, and it's a spiritual one, is now right before our eyes. If you think that the devil's going to lose his demonic sacrament of abortion and not do something about it, but everybody and what they stand for is on display. You're very smart people. The tree is known by its fruit. What's your fruit? And I'm not talking about weak sin. I'm probably the worst sinner here. We always fall into sin. But if you go to confession and you live the sacraments, that's being a Christian Catholic. Being a rebel is a whole different story. It's either in the kingdom or you're against it. You're either for us or you're with us. The sons of light, sons and daughters of light, and the sons of daughters of darkness. The line is being drawn. The sifting has begun. And the great battle is about to begin. What side are you on?